I remember once during a group therapy session, a man in his 40s stood up and shared, "I can't remember the last time I cried, but every night I can't sleep." He was always on time, well-spoken, seemed strong, and in control of his emotions. But in his eyes, there was something strange, a kind of exhaustion that had no name. Everyone thought he's fine, but sometimes those who seem the most fine are the ones who've mastered the art of hiding their deepest pain. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Some people aren't cold, they're just cautious. Some aren't distant, they've simply lost trust. Have you ever lived like that? Always holding it together, always in control, always calm, just to avoid being hurt again. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever said "I'm fine" when deep down you wish someone would ask, "Are you really?" If so, drop a comment. I've done that. We weren't born wearing masks, but after each heartbreak, a piece of the soul retreats, and we start to live through a social self, what Jung called the persona. It protects us, but it also makes us forget who we truly are. Modern psychology calls this emotional self-defense. Jung called it a complex and unconscious emotional cluster that can take control when an old wound is triggered. Have you ever gotten irrationally angry just because your partner replied late? Withdrawn as soon as someone started showing they cared? Overthought everything as if not being in control meant being betrayed again? These reactions aren't crazy. They're signs of wounds that haven't healed. And the scarier truth is, the less aware we are of them, the more silently they control us. In this video, you won't just hear psychological theory. You'll see yourself in the journey of the unconscious, where pain hides beneath a cold exterior, where hypervigilance is the residue of unspoken wounds, where the shadow operates quietly each time you say, "I don't need anyone." We'll go layer by layer, from complex to Rwanda, to persona, to shadow, and finally the self, your authentic essence. You are not your wounds, but if you never face them, they'll define you forever. Come with me, not out into the world, but inward. The darkness within, when your uncontrolled behaviors are whispers from a forgotten part of you. Imagine a woman well-dressed, polite, steady in her job, loved by her friends. People often say, "She's always so grounded, never loses it." But every night when no one's watching, she lies awake for hours, all because of a single unanswered text. Inside, her emotions rise like waves: doubt, anxiety, anger. And yet she has no idea why. All she knows is she can't control herself. Carl Jung called this the shadow. All the emotions, urges, memories, and instincts we were once forced to bury just to be loved, to survive, to avoid being hurt again. Have you ever overreacted to gentle rejection, gone cold just because someone said "I'm busy"? Panicked deep down when your partner said "I need some space"? You're not crazy. What you're hearing is the voice of a long-abandoned part of yourself. Complexes, old scripts that still live in your mind. In Jungian psychology, these behaviors are signs of complexes, emotional memory clusters, with a life of their own formed from unprocessed wounds. A child abandoned on their birthday may grow into a 40-year-old man who trembles when his partner doesn't text back for a few hours. The reaction isn't about the present, it's about a nervous system wired by memory. Carl Jung wrote, "Complexes are like fragments of the soul split off and living a life of their own inside us. When triggered, a complex can hijack your nervous system. You might break into a cold sweat, heart racing, freeze, lose your voice, say things you don't mean, or silently disappear." Shadow isn't always rage. Sometimes it's being too nice. We often think the shadow is just anger, jealousy, violence. But it can also be the one who always takes care of others but never knows how to be cared for. The one who's too agreeable, too nice, but really just terrified of being disliked. The one who always smiles, always stays positive, because being sad once led to shame. You might not recognize your shadow in what you do, but in what you never allow yourself to do. The shadow isn't frightening because it attacks you. It's frightening because it lives within you, and you've never talked to it. Emily's emotional story. Emily, 35, shared, "I don't remember the last time I cried. My emotions feel frozen." She grew up in a home full of emotional violence where tears were weakness and sadness was selfish. So she learned not to feel. That's when the persona, the social mask, was born: a successful, gentle, kind, stable woman. But she said, "Inside, I don't know who I am anymore. I feel like I'm just playing a role." Are you playing a role? The strong one, the kind one, the mature one? Have you ever wished someone would ask, "Are you really okay?" instead of just saying, "You're amazing"? Pause for a moment. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and try to remember when was the last time you truly felt seen. Not when someone praised you, not when you achieved something, but when you were allowed to be vulnerable and no one judged you. If you can't recall, it's possible you've been living in the shadow for too long without ever looking back. If any part of this made you pause or brought you close to tears, leave a comment. I'm learning to face my shadow without fear. You are not alone. Here we're learning to truly see each other, not through our successes, but through the truth we carry inside. The persona, the mask we wear to survive and be accepted, can sometimes become the prison of our soul. In the next part, we'll explore, when is the persona helpful? When does it become the greatest block to receiving love? And how do we remove the mask without losing ourselves? Healing doesn't begin with defeating the shadow. It begins when we sit down, look it in the eye, and say, "I'm ready to listen." Persona complexes and the power of projection. When you love others more than you love yourself. Continuing from the previous part, we learned how to recognize the shadow, the repressed side of ourselves. Now we'll explore the persona, our social mask, the common complexes that silently shape us, and what happens when our unacknowledged shadow is projected onto others. Persona, the mask that sometimes becomes a prison. In Jungian theory, persona is the face we put on to interact with the world, a necessary tool for social survival. But when the persona becomes too thick, we forget how we truly feel inside. The persona is useful when you follow principles like politeness or confidence in appropriate settings. But a false identity forms when you live only for the image. "I'm fine, I'm always strong," while suppressing your deep need to be seen and loved as you are. For example, if you constantly judge yourself for not being good enough, if you hide every trembling moment, if you never allow yourself to cry in front of others, your persona has gone beyond self-protection. It has become self-denial. Abandonment and inferiority complex. Common emotional wounds, the abandonment complex. This complex forms when you were suddenly left behind in childhood. Later in life, you may feel anxious when loved ones don't reply to messages, feel deeply disappointed when someone cancels plans without a reason, or you shut down emotionally to avoid the pain of waiting and being let down. It's not your fault. This is how you learn to survive, by avoiding the fall. B, inferiority complex. Take the story of Mark, 33, a skilled software engineer. As a child, he was always compared to his older brother or classmates. Every compliment felt hollow against the voice in his head, "You're still not enough." Even now, with a great academic and career record, Mark feels he's never quite there. He pushes hard measures himself against others and ends up exhausted. When the inferiority complex goes unrecognized, it hides behind hard work and discipline, but leaves you drained in the chase for worthiness. Shadow complex and projection. When you see others, but you're really seeing yourself. When complexes go unexamined, they emerge through projection when we cast our shadow onto others. Examples. If you get irrationally angry when someone replies late, it might be your abandonment complex speaking, not them. If you doubt yourself and feel small in the presence of someone successful, you're not really seeing them. You're seeing your own fear of failure reflected back. It's not about the other person. You're not seeing who they are. You're seeing a part of you, a mirror image. Jung said, "Projection is the means by which you encounter the parts of yourself you've pushed away." When persona complex and projection collide, imagine this inner system: shadow, the part you reject, emotions, memories, traits. Complex, a shadow with memory ready to react when triggered. Persona, the mask you wear to be accepted. When the persona is too strong, it hides the shadow. And when the complex activates, you don't see yourself, you see someone else. But really, you're encountering your reflection through projection. Take Angela, a sales rep. She smiles like a porcelain doll in every hectic meeting. But at night, she sobs, remembering her parents' fights. Her pattern: repressed emotions, hidden shadow, anxious insecurity complex, projection on coworkers. "Why don't they value my opinion?" And then she whispers, "I feel like I'm just an actor in my own life." The way out. When you begin to see clearly, you don't fix others. The real value is recognizing yourself. Naming a complex doesn't trap you. In fact, the moment you say, "That's just my abandonment complex, not my truth," you shift from being a victim to becoming a witness. Now you can pause and breathe, asking, is this reaction from the past or from now? Tell yourself, thank you, dear inner self, for reacting. Then continue living from awareness, not just instinct. If you've ever cried at night from fear of abandonment, if you've achieved so much yet still feel not enough, drop a comment. I see myself in the abandonment / inferiority complex. Here we don't judge. We see each other clearly and deeply through the scars the eyes can't see. In the next part, we won't stop at recognition. We'll explore how to truly meet your shadow, not to be devoured by it. Rebirth through techniques like active imagination dialogue with the shadow dream work and journaling. How to let light in so the shadow no longer dominates but becomes a part of your wholeness. This journey will help you reclaim your inner voice, revive the parts of you that were lost, and bring you home to your own heart. The persona isn't you. It's just your best performance. There's one thing Jung said that I want you to carry throughout this part. Persona is what one is not, but what oneself and others think one is. We aren't born wearing a mask. We stitch it together from threads of expectation, fear, and the sting of past rejections. Imagine a man who always smiles in meetings, never complains, always positive. But when he's alone, he feels hollow, unknown, unseen. That's the split between persona and shadow, a silent divorce within the soul. When the persona becomes too strong, it suppresses the shadow, and when the shadow is starved for too long, it breaks the persona. That's when someone who seemed fine suddenly collapses. The shadow isn't just pain, it's potential unlived. Jung once said the shadow is 90% pure gold. It's not only wounds, the shadow also holds your forgotten vitality, your passion, instinct, wild energy that was once alive, but was forced into silence. It might be the voice you weren't allowed to use as a child, the righteous anger you learned to suppress, the love for art you were told was impractical. The shadow holds what you repressed so the persona could gain approval. But when you sit beside your shadow, you'll realize it's not just scars, it's a map back to yourself. When persona becomes a golden cage in relationships, let's revisit Tom's seemingly ideal, calm, patient kind. But whenever his partner tries to connect emotionally, he pulls away. Tom's persona is the nice guy, but his shadow hides fear of being controlled, hurt, swallowed whole. So when his partner asks, "What are you feeling?" his brain doesn't hear love. It hears, "You're not good enough again, are you?" That's when the shadow takes the wheel and we don't even notice. At work, persona leads to sweet exhaustion. Many successful people fall into the trap of the persona, becoming the one who never breaks. Take Erica, a creative executive known for handling everything. Every time someone asks, "Are you okay?" she smiles, "I'm used to it." Inside, she feels like a warhorse that's never allowed to rest. Her shadow, a little girl who had to be perfect to be loved. She doesn't dare pause because to stop is to be unworthy. That's the cost of an unbreakable persona. No one gets to come in, and you lose track of who you are if you're not performing. When the persona collapses, the shadow rises like a storm. One day something happens, a job loss, a breakup, a moment where you're seen not being okay. The persona cracks. The shadow surges. You lose your sense of self. This is what Jung called the dark night of the soul, not an end, but a beginning. A moment to pause and look back at the life you've been only half living. How do we live in harmony with persona and shadow? Notice when you're performing. Not all performance is bad, but ask yourself, am I acting to survive or am I truly present? Listen to the shadow through journaling or art. I'm upset I was ignored. Maybe that's an old voice asking to be heard. Write it down, sketch it. The shadow doesn't want to scare you, it wants to be seen. Practice vulnerability with someone you trust. Show your fear, your softness. Just to one safe person, let the shadow breathe without letting it destroy. Are you living so long in your persona that you can no longer hear your shadow's voice? Share in the comments. I'm learning to listen to the part of me I used to reject. By saying that you're not just expressing a feeling, you're opening a door, a space for others to know they're not alone in this journey. We've dived deep into the dark, unmasked the persona, and uncovered our hidden reactions. But the most important part is still ahead. How do we creatively engage and transform the shadow instead of endlessly reacting to it? In the next chapter, we'll explore a technique Jung used on himself. Active imagination and how you can turn fear into living energy. Love when the unconscious speaks. Love doesn't begin with a choice, but with an awakening. Have you ever fallen in love in a way you couldn't control? Not because the other person was objectively perfect, but because they awakened something in you. A feeling both strange and deeply familiar, as if they weren't a stranger, but a forgotten part of you coming home. Jung called this phenomenon projection, casting unconscious parts of ourselves onto others, especially the ones we fall in love with. Love is often a search for the self we lost. Imagine a man raised in a home where emotions were suppressed, where he learned that crying was weakness and dreaming was foolish. Slowly, he lost touch with his sensitivity and intuition. Then one day he meets a woman who is free-spirited, creative, gentle. His heart stirs not just because of who she is, but because she reflects a part of him he forgot existed. Over time, though, when she no longer acts the way he projected onto her, he feels disappointed, even angry. Not because she changed, but because the projection shattered. When things fall apart, it's actually a wake-up call. In therapy, the most painful moments in love aren't always about betrayal, but about broken illusions. I thought he would always be gentle. I believed she understood me better than anyone. I was sure I found my other half. When projections fade, it's not just about being disappointed in the other person. It's about being forced to confront the parts of ourselves we once rediscovered through them. The real pain isn't the loss of them, it's the separation from your own unconscious you briefly touched through their presence. Anima and animus, the soul's reflections through love in Jungian psychology. Anima is the inner feminine in men. Animus is the inner masculine in women. They are archetypal soul images living deep in the unconscious. When not yet integrated, they are projected outward, making us fall for people who seem fated. A man disconnected from his anima is drawn to women who are mystical, emotional, intuitive, only to later blame them for being too sensitive. A woman out of touch with her animus idolizes the idea of a perfect man, only to feel crushed when he doesn't live up to that ideal. Jung called this the phase of illusory love, where we don't truly love each other, but the reflection of our own inner image we've cast upon each other. How do you know you're projecting? Ask yourself, do I love who they are? Or do I love the feeling of salvation I get from them? Do I feel like they hold the key to my soul? Do I overreact when they change? If yes, anima or animus may be influencing your attachment. But that's not a mistake, it's an invitation. Because when you love the wrong person, maybe you're actually right with your soul, just expressing it in the wrong way. Withdrawing projection is the first step toward real love. Pulling back your projections doesn't mean losing your feelings. It means I stop loving you as a symbol of what I lack and begin to love you as a human with limits and depth. That's when anima animus is no longer externalized, but integrated through creativity, emotional depth, intuition, strength, and freedom. A man who integrates his anima might connect to his feelings, write music, nurture his inner life. A woman who integrates her animus may start acting with clarity, making decisions, developing reason without losing her feminine spirit. True love begins when we stop seeking someone to heal us. You no longer need anyone to save you. And when you stop chasing someone to complete you, you're finally ready to love. Love then is no longer about my missing half. It becomes another soul walking beside me, growing, awakening together. Have you ever realized you were in love with an image, not the real person? Share in the comments. I'm learning to withdraw my projections so I can love the real person, not just a dream. The call to return. The journey of individuation. There's a woman named Clara, 35 years old, a marketing director at a major firm in Chicago. Everyone sees her as a role model, calm, intelligent, with a stable family. But every night after the coffee machine goes quiet and her child is asleep, Clara sits in front of the mirror, unsure of who she really is. I've lived by everything my mother taught me: be smart, independent, never show weakness. But I never ask myself, what do I truly want? She says, eyes glistening. Clara is the perfect example of a soul that has gone too far into the persona and lost connection with her authentic self. That is where individuation begins, the journey back to the center of the self. Carl Jung wrote, individuation is not about becoming someone. It is about daring to return to yourself, your primal essence, uncut by norms and expectations. Individuation is not rebellion against society. It is rebellion against unconscious conformity. You still live in the world, but now you live with true presence, no longer driven by ghosts from the past or unconscious masks. The key stages of the individuation journey. Removing the persona. I am not that image Clara once believed. If I'm not strong, if I don't stay in control, I'll fall apart. But then she realized her strength was a childhood performance, scripted in a home where tears were seen as weakness. The persona helps us adapt, but when clung to too tightly, it becomes a golden prison. The journey begins with looking at the mask and asking, who is wearing this? B, facing the shadow. I have a dark side, and it deserves to be heard, Jung said. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow holds what we've rejected: anger, envy, the longing to be loved. When Clara started journaling, memories of her often absent father returned. She realized her need to control didn't come from power, but from a fear of being left behind. C. Withdrawing projection. They didn't hurt me. I cast my old wounds onto them. Projection makes us fall in love with someone because they resemble someone from our past and then feel let down when they don't fulfill that role. Clara once believed her husband didn't care enough, but through therapy, she cried. The truth is, I haven't forgiven my father. Projection is unconscious. Reclaiming it is a deeply conscious act, one that lifts you out of old scripts and into the present moment. D. Meeting the self. I'm no longer hiding. The self is not loud. It is the silent center of your soul that needs no validation. It is the calm gaze, the quiet knowing where Clara could finally breathe and say, I don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. The self, where pain finds meaning. Many ask, can pain really be transformed? Jung answered, through a path. Pain does not vanish, it transforms when it finds meaning. The one who was bullied becomes a protector of the weak. The one who grieved learns to guard what is sacred. Clara, once shaped by expectations, now helps other women live their truth. The self doesn't deny pain, it embraces it and reshapes it into creative strength. Mandala, the symbol of wholeness. Jung observed that mandalas often appear spontaneously in dreams as symbols of healing. A mandala is a circle, the structure of consciousness, where every fragmented piece returns to the center. Picture a painting in the middle, the child you once were. Around it, layers of persona shadow complexes. And now you walk into the center of the circle, no longer running. How to begin this journey? Practical steps. Journal from 3 perspectives: persona, shadow, self. Create a personal symbol photo sketch song that represents your authentic self. Meditate for 5 minutes each morning asking, what does my self need today? Use active imagination, invite your shadow to tea in your mind and ask, what are you protecting? Ask yourself, what image am I living under? If I were fully accepted, how would I live differently? Do I dare to set down the persona even for one day? Share the first insight you had about your shadow or persona. Write it in the comments. I'm learning to step into the center of my being. You are not alone. The path of individuation is deep but never lonely. In the next part, you'll be guided through a simple ritual to reconnect with the self. No need for anything fancy, just presence. Together, we'll enter the space where pain becomes not a burden, but a messenger, reminding us to come home to our essence. The journey back to yourself. If you're still here, it doesn't just mean you finished a video. It likely means you've touched something profoundly personal, a place within you that you've always known was there, but rarely paused long enough to truly hear. Carl Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And if today you've dared to step into that darkness, even for a moment, then you've already begun the journey home to yourself. Not every wound needs to be healed. Some scars never fade. But that doesn't mean you can't live beautifully with them. In fact, they are part of what gives you depth, compassion, and a unique sensitivity. Maybe you've thought, I'm too broken, too complicated, too wounded to be loved. But the truth is, you can still love, still connect, and still live fully, not because you're free from darkness, but because you dare to walk through it. An invitation, begin the individuation journey. I'm not inviting you to change yourself. I'm inviting you to show up for yourself like an explorer, journeying through the layers of your psyche where shadow, persona, complex, and self all coexist. Write down, I'm learning to listen to my pain. Spend 5 minutes a day asking, what part of me has been forgotten? Start an unconscious journal, not for what's right or wrong, but for what's deeply honest. And if you dare to share just one small truth in the comments, a feeling, a thought, a question, you'll help create a space where pain no longer has to hide. We are walking this path together. This channel isn't about advice. It's a mirror where we illuminate ourselves through the light of awareness. If something in you has been stirred, subscribe, not because you need more content, but so you'll always have a place to return to. A place where you don't have to be fine to be accepted. You are not alone. And if you've ever thought no one really sees me, then please know there are thousands learning to listen to themselves just like you. Write a comment. Leave a reflection. You'll see other souls will recognize you. Leave a mark for yourself. Before you leave this video, do one small thing, a symbolic act to reconnect with the part of you that's been forgotten. Maybe play a piece of instrumental music. Maybe close your eyes for 2 minutes, or simply whisper in your heart. I allow myself to exist fully as both light and shadow. That is the first step, and also the most courageous one. Where can you begin next? Pick another video on this channel on shadow persona or dreams. Join the email series I'm launching soon to practice individuation weekly. Or comment below, I'm ready to begin the journey back to my true self. From that moment on, you're not just a viewer, you are a soul awakening.